Performance. What does performance actually mean in trading? We have to talk about this topic in as much detail as possible without me going over too long, because there's a lot of detail I can go into in this. And this will relate to the psychology of winning, which is a video I'm going to do after this one or whenever the time is right. I'm going to start with performance, because performance and what it means has been massively misconstrued, hugely misconstrued from what I've seen over the past 5-6 years, which again is not a long time to trade, but it's enough to see enough nonsense where you can only tolerate so much, right? So performance, what does it mean? Performance does not mean that if you have a winning week that you're a great trader. Neither does it mean that if you have a losing week that you're a poor trader. I'm sure you can all acknowledge this. Why is it that even with this information, right, even with all of this information, we still fail to think probabilistically, we still fall victim to our emotional state, and so on and so forth. We still take trades that we look back on that we shouldn't have taken, and we still cannot gain control or management over our emotional state. Right, I'll tell you why. The answer is very, very simple. Trading is made so overcomplicated, right? I want to make this as simple as possible for you guys to understand. And this entire paradox of trading, I want to sum it up on my channel, right? And do more, of course. So performance, what does performance actually mean in terms of trading? This is not an opinion, this is a fact. This is not my opinion, this is a fact. When you got experience, you study professionals, you speak with professionals, you sit with professionals, you understand how they think as traders, you really get a true idea what performance is actually about. So, performance, I need a sip of water for this. So performance has everything to do with the state of mind that you bring into the markets in the heat of the moment under pressure. Different forms of pressure. Pre-trade, during the trade, and post-trade. Now, before we can understand pressure and talk about emotional management, we have to understand physical, biological management, right? Managing your physiology, your physiological state. If you guys paid a little bit more attention to yourself in the moment of making the decision when you take the trade, buy or sell, doesn't matter, just taking the trade, also during the trade and after the trade, you will get a massive reality check. How many of you do this where you take a trade and you write before comments before you taking the trade? It's absolutely useless, writing down your emotional state before taking a trade, because it's always going to be bias driven. Because we think that we're rational as human beings, right? That's what we've been led to believe. We think that we're logical in nature, that we rationalize things, right? It's correct to a degree, but we don't realize that we're rationalizing our emotional state if we let it amp up, if we let it get to a stage where it gets to that point. So if you're operating from a fear-based thinking, and fear which generates in your right brain, your right survival emotional brain, your right brain's all about that. Your right brain's all about creativity, survival, emotion, all those kind of stuff. Your left brain is all about logic, truth finding, reasoning, all that kind of stuff. You guys should study something called the Cartesian paradigm. I'll pop that down here somewhere. That's the paradigm that a lot of people, in fact the entire generation, is not operating within, where everything has to be quantified. This is why people think, oh, if I know more about the market, or I know more about price action, then my results will reflect in that, right? Only in the starting stages, right? Because you at one point your knowledge is insufficient. You have to know something about the market to actually trade it. I totally agree with that. But there comes a point where you know enough to actually extract profitability out of your system, so long as it's a system that has an edge, it's dynamic and rigid, and it's been tested and it's thorough, right? Which is a different video for a different day, because I'm going to squash that topic as well completely. But my point being with all this is that when you can understand how the generation, especially of traders, think nowadays, everything is all about logic-based thinking, and it's not your fault. The system that we go through, school, which is completely corrupted, by the way, and it's completely broken, it punishes mistakes and it punishes failure, but it rewards left brain thinking. That's why a lot of people leave school with a qualification, but they're not educated, right? Education and schooling are two different things. Education has everything to do with intelligence. Schooling doesn't. It's going to hit a lot of people there, but it's the truth, right? You can leave school uneducated with multiple degrees. So we're coming from a system that rewards left brain dominant thinking, and we're going into a market, into an arena where this is not about left brain thinking. This is about balancing both hemispheres, and there's an art to doing that. I'll also talk about that in another video as well, because I don't want to go on too long here. But let's start with what an emotion actually is. An emotion is actually a construct, okay? But an emotion is not psychological first, it's physiological before it becomes psychological. I'll give you proof of that. And if you guys want to go study that, by all means, go and study that, look into that for yourself. How many of you guys have actually been in a situation, I'm sure all of you have, as traders, if you're a trader, you've definitely been through the situation, where you've been anticipating a trade, you've been forecasting it over the night, and you go to sleep, and you wake up in the morning and you got these butterflies in your stomach, right? In anticipation of where the trade's actually going to be, win or loss, and you find out it's a loss. How many of you get that stabbing pain in your stomach? Almost 100% of you, right? Because you're all human, and humans experience the same things to a degree. You get that stabbing pain in your stomach before you begin to process it psychologically, right? And if you're honest with yourself, if you're really honest with yourself, you won't deny that, because that is exactly how it works. You feel the emotion in the physical sense before you actually feel it psychologically. Because what happens, your body is designed to react first before it actually begins to process information. I'm sure most of you guys have read Chimp Paradox. The Chimp, right? I've not actually read the book, but I've had snippets of it. So when you're on the road, someone cuts you off, you say things, you do things that you regret afterwards. You're looking at the market, you're looking at trades that you're justifying in the moment, you're rationalizing in the moment, which we'll get to in a second. Then afterwards, when the week's finished, you look at them same trades and you think, what the hell was I doing? That wasn't the person that I thought I was, that I was actually trading those setups. That's a different version of me that was trading them. What was going on? Very, very simple answer to that. We rationalize our emotional state as humans. We do. So when you're operating in a fear-based thinking, which happens how? There's uncertainty in the market, okay? Your brain perceives anything that's either of psychological discomfort or anything that's a real threat. Your brain perceives both them things as an actual threat. It treats them as the same thing. Threat is threat to the brain. That's very binary. It's very simple to the brain. If someone holds a gun to your head, it's a real threat, you can die. If you're walking through the woods at night with the fear that somebody's out to kill you, so a perception of threat versus a real threat, your brain it brings about the same physical responses, which are what? Misregulated breathing. So your brain is stripped of oxygen supply and it's driven into your muscles because your body's getting ready to attack or to run. It's all a stress response. Again, cortisol levels rise, blood pressure increases, heart rate increases, and heart rate is directly, again, attached to your and linked to your fight-flight instinct. Whenever these things happen and you let them get out of control, your right emotional brain takes over, and your left brain, all it can do is rationalize your emotional state. So when now you're looking at the market and you're looking at a trade and your heart rate's going up, and you're not aware of this, and you should be aware of this, because if you're not, believe me, you're miles behind. This is why I don't agree with people when they say that, deal with losses, just learn to deal with it. How does that make any sense at all? I can't tell you learn to deal with losses and you're just going to magically learn to deal with losses. Or just learn to think of probabilities. Hey, pick up a book, read Trading in the Zone, chapter 7 probabilities, and you will think probabilistically. If that worked, we'd have multi-millionaires as traders popping out everywhere. We don't. People are still repeating the same things. Why? Because these guys don't get simple truth of how the body is actually designed to work. This is simple. I'm only giving you guys like really entry-level stuff here. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm going to put that out there, right? I'm not a fake. Right? If I was saying all this with the premise of I'm a clinical psychologist, just stop watching my videos, right? I'll tell you the truth, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I'm passionate about this, right? And when you're passionate, you come across a lot of information. Passion is another thing. Again, in another video, I've got so many videos lined up that I want to talk about, because passion is like a fire. When you let it get out of control, it can make you do very, very silly things. Very silly things. So we'll talk about that another time. Your body leaves these trace markers. So in the moment when you're looking at that trade and your heart rate's going up, all these things are happening and you're not aware of it, which, like I said, you should be, that is going to cloud your ability to think logically, to think impartially, to think in a balanced form. You can't think neutrally, you can't think clearly, you can't think in the way that you're supposed to think as a trader if you're ignoring all these things. It's like the engine management light coming on in your car and you just put duct tape over it. Eventually your car's going to have to get taken to the mechanic, isn't it? So don't avoid these things and don't suppress. The worst thing you can do as a trader is suppress your emotions, to say, don't think about it. If I tell you guys not to think about, let me think of an example, a bright yellow car. I said, don't think about it. How many of you guys have actually just sat there and thought about that? If you tell someone who's having a panic attack not to panic, just watch what happens next. They're going to panic more, right? So when you tell yourself, oh, don't think about it, it's fine, just move on, you're going to think about it more and more and more. It's going to eat away at you. So the goal that you want to achieve is not to breathe and believe and all of a sudden you become a millionaire. But when you physically regulate yourself, because quicker heart rate is actually attached and associated with the amplification of fear in the mind as an emotion. You can go and research that. Also, I recommend you guys go and research into dopamine and testosterone, how they link to actually risk taking, because they have a direct correlation. Look into all these things and actually map them onto yourself. You don't want to be a knowledge whore, right? What you want to have is specialized knowledge, specific knowledge, intentional knowledge. You want to take that knowledge and you actually want to map that onto yourself. You want to become an experiment of your own self. Every single week you're looking at the market, you're looking at your performance, which I said is what? Making sure that you make clear-cut decisions, which I'm going to talk about in a second, very quickly. And when you can do that, right, and you look back at your performance of the week, you can assess yourself in a very clear state. You can start to see what are your clear psychological issues. When you start to take trades that you justify in the moment, you're only justifying them because you're in a state of fear. You have this anticipation, right? You don't know what's going to happen next. Your body's giving you all these signals that you're ignoring. Calm yourself down and regulate. Slow your breath down. Meditate, not to quiet the mind, but to actually approach the thoughts that are in there. A lot of you have very corrupted thoughts that are in your mind that are actually holding you back from trading, and they're actually wrecking your self-image. This is another thing. I want to tell you guys a quick story. So I won't mention this person's name, of course, but if you're watching this, you'll know who I'm talking about. I said your real reason why you're trading is because you're in pursuit of the person that you see, that you can't wait for others to see you as. How many of you guys feel outcasted from society because you're doing something different? People have called you a gambler, trading's risky, all this kind of stuff. We've heard it all the time, right? You already feel outcasted, even though there's a rat race in trading as well. Another video. But you feel outcasted, right? So you're constantly in pursuit of this power, right? So the position that you'll be in when you actually achieve what you want, this position of power and authority that you'll actually gain by having the capital, having the money, the time freedom. So you're not after the time freedom, you're not after the money, you're after what it brings about in you as a person, and you're after how people are going to view you when you're in that position. This is a self-image issue, because a lot of you are already so unhappy with who you are right now. You're in pursuit of this person, which I don't think is necessarily a very unhealthy thing, because it's a driving factor. But you have to correct your self-image. Again, this is another module we talk about in Rewired. I say we, Mark talked about this in Rewired. It's a very in-depth module. For those that have seen it, let me know down below as well. And genuinely let me know down below your takeaways from that module, because other people need to actually hear how deep this actually goes with self-image. I've seen so many traders come and go, including myself, right, that had very deep-rooted self-image issues, and they did not know that was the literal reason between why they didn't succeed versus where they are. Now, to bridge that gap, you've got to get rid of all these deep-rooted psychological and subconscious issues, which are always underlying there. And if you don't, like I said, I explained very, very briefly about the brain. You're always going to have these psychological blocking factors. So when you're taking the trade, or when this person was taking the trade, I got to the root of it. And you have to get to the root of these things with psychological related issues. Every time he's looking at a trade, he's placing so much emotional charge on that trade that winning to him means that he's closer to being that person that he desired to be, in that position of authority and power. You see my point? This is how deep it goes. Because he was not happy with himself at that time. After this, it completely changed everything for him, by the way. When you actually come to terms with who you are and you become present, yeah? Professional traders know this as well, right? Ask any professional out there and they'll tell you the art of staying present. And you sort of fall in love with who you are right now and not who you could be. What happens is you come to a state of acceptance, your mind becomes clear, you can make clear-cut decisions. Losing and winning doesn't have a subconscious belief on it anymore. It's no longer a subconscious construct of this illustration that you have of who you could be. It goes really deep, but again, I'm keeping it surface level here. So I'm just giving you an example of how important these things are that I just left unseen. But people will always say, forget all that. How is that going to help me understand the market more? Because I need to understand the market more to surely win, right? The Cartesian paradigm, like I talked about. A lot of people are addicted to this. It's like a drug, and they're addicts and they don't know. It's like a virus even. So all these things in the market, decisions and all these kind of stuff, you can only bring about clarity to these things when you regulate yourself emotionally by doing so physically first. Hopefully you guys have taken some tips from this as well. I'm going to do more videos talking about this in a lot more depth, but that's what performance is. Great decisions coming from a plan that is dynamic and rigid. I'm going to summarize this before I finish. Very, very, very simple. Extremely simple. Let me show you something.